Welcome to Menopause Moguls podcast, the Elevation Talk series, with yours truly, Dr. Joyelle. I am Dr. Joyelle, the Menopause Mogul, board certified OBGYN and business coach for Black women 40 and over. And my mission is to educate, embolden, and empower Black women and other women of color in their journey through health and careers. This is a space for Black women and other women of color to share their compelling trials and tribulations in their health and or in their careers and businesses. This is where we recognize the humanity of Black women and show how Black women continue to elevate despite midlife challenges and changes. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Menopause Moguls. Today, I wanted to talk about driving while Black. And you're probably wondering, what does driving while Black have to do with menopause, midlife, all the things? We'll get into it in a second. But before I start, let me just call out the listeners. Those of you who are listening on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you're listening, whatever listening app you are listening through the podcast, why didn't y'all tell me that I did not upload my last episode last week? Nobody told me. Y'all, listen, I'm giving y'all the permission to hit me up in the DMs and let a sister know, like, girl, where your podcast episode today? It's not there. It's not there. So I apologize for that. I did not upload my last episode with Karen Taylor Bass, talking about being still in midlife, menopause, and beyond. So it's uploaded, obviously by now. I just realized it before I started to record for this podcast episode. So I just want to send my apologies for those of you who just listened to the podcast. Thank you again for listening. But let me know that if you ain't see the episode come up, let me know so I can put it on there. But it's there now. And those of you who have watched the YouTube video, thanks for watching. Thank all of you again for subscribing. And please subscribe if you have not already. Please share what you see here today, what you've seen in prior episodes, and for the future, because the more of you who share, the more women are exposed to the content and all the things that I am dropping through the Menopause Moguls podcast. Also, like, comment if you're watching on YouTube. Please leave a review if you're listening on the Apple Podcast. Because again, when you do all of that, that helps the podcast to be seen more readily for those who need to see it. Because I know a lot of us are still out here roaming in these midlife streets, feeling lost and alone when they're dealing with their menopausal transition. So we are trying to avoid that. And we can do that as a collective if we, like I said, comment, like, share, leave a review. And please, I am definitely open and want to hear what you all think, whether it's in a review, whether it's in the comments. Let me know, because I want to continue to provide value for all of you. So I just want to know. And so let me know. All right. Back to this episode. I'm calling it Weathering in the Black Experience of Menopause. And I wanted to start with a story of driving while Black. Okay. So those of you who do not know, I'm a cheer mom. I have two girls and who are 12, about to be 13. Lord help me. And 11-year-old. She just turned 11 on Valentine's Day. So I am a cheer mom. One of my sisters is a cheer mom. So my niece is in the same cheer organization as my girl. So I basically went to that organization because my niece was there. My sister convinced me. She tricked me because she's like, come on, it's great. And I got in there. I'm like, Lord, this is a lot. This is a lot, right? So they are on a competitive team. So we have been traveling a lot, y'all. So I have been kind of all over the place. These last few weeks is like every weekend we have a cheer competition. So at the time of recording this podcast episode, I just drove back from New Jersey, went to Wildwoods, New Jersey for a competition. The girls did well. And a couple of weeks ago, I drove to Tennessee. So me and my sister and another cheer mom, another Black cheer mom, we drove to Tennessee. And first of all, you know, it was Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. If anybody's familiar with that, let me know. Because when they told us we were going to Pigeon Forge, I'm like, where the hell? What's that? I've heard of Nashville, right? I was familiar with that. Knoxville, familiar with that. But Pigeon Forge, I'm like, what is this? So we went to Pigeon Forge, and it was not what I expected. I was expecting to go to the cheer competition and be in a hotel that's in the sticks somewhere, nothing but farmland. And we go to the convention center for the cheer competition, go back home go back to the hotel, and that would be it. But little did I know that it was like the baby Las Vegas for children. All right. So when we drove there, it was like, as soon as we got to where we were going in Pigeon Forge, it was like this whole strip, this whole street of different activities that the kids can do: go-karts, museums, snow tubing, like all these things that I did not expect. And the kids was like, oh my God, what is this? Can we do this? Can we do can we do everything? I'm like, no, we're here for the cheer competition. That's what we're here for. But we did allow, after the competition was over, it was 2 days, we did allow some time in so the girls can have a little bit of fun before we headed back to the DMV, to Maryland. So on our way back to the DMV, so like I said, there's 3 of us, right? 3 moms, and there are 4 Black girls in the back. So my 2 girls, the other cheer mom's daughter, she's 10. And my niece, she's 16. And we are, in the minivan. Those of you who are minivan fans, I am not, but that's another story. My sister is. But anyway, the other cheer mom decided she was going to start the journey as far as driving back, because we basically were all taking turns. And so she was taking the first leg of the trip back to Maryland. And she was, driving normally in the left lane. And we saw a cop on the side. Now, I was using my Waze, right? Y'all know that app, the Waze, where they tell y'all when a cop is coming up. I need to know these things because I'm a bit of a speed, to put heavy foots is what my husband called me when I'm driving, especially when I'm, taking road trips. So that's just me. So I need to know when where the cops at, right? So anyway, she's driving and normal speed. And we did notice a cop, right, on the side, kind of in the cut. And I'm like, okay, so, but we drive by, no big deal. And then, I'm in the passenger seat and my sister's in the back with the girls. And the cheer mom goes, oh, the cop is behind me. And I'm like, oh, okay. So then there was a car in front of her, probably about a little bit less than a car length between her and the other car in front of her. So I think the other car also saw the cop coming, who's in the truck. So the other car got over to the right lane. So the cheer mom, that I was driving with, she got over with that car and kind of a little bit close to it, but she was trying to get over so she can get out of the way of the cop, right? Rightfully so. That's what we do. And next thing we know, she's like, oh, he put his lights on. He's pulling me over. I'm like, what? What are you pulling you over for? Right? So we're all confused. Like, why are we being pulled over? So she pulls over, and let me just tell y'all, for me, I personally can get a little bit anxious when a cop is pulling me over. And those of you who don't understand that, is just, given the things that have happened in the past, um, things that as a Black person, as a Black woman, think about when we have interactions with police. And I'm not saying that, I am against the police. I'm not saying any of that at all. I know there are awesome police officers out there. But there is a sense of anxiety that I get when there is some potential interaction with police because of past experiences and other things that have happened, right? So when we got pulled over, and I'm like, okay. So he came around to the passenger side where I was sitting. He was like, so I put my window down and he said, you wasn't doing anything wrong, but I pulled you over because you were driving too close. And I'm like, oh. And the other cheer mom that was driving, she was like, oh, okay, I was just trying to get over. He was like, yeah, when you drive too close, if that car in front of you stopped suddenly, that would have been an accident. And she said, oh, okay. Sorry about that. And I was like, yes, officer, sorry. We're just on our way from back home from a cheer competition. He's like, oh, okay. Well, let me see your driver's license. So she pulls out her driver's license and gives it to him. And then he takes it and he says, okay, I want you to get out of the car. Talking to the cheer mom that was driving. And in my mind, like, what? Why don't you have to get out of the car? Because usually when, cops pull you over, typically asks for your license, registration. And he also asks, is this your car? I'm like, this is a rental car, because we came back from cheer competition. And like I said, from my experience, usually actually your registration, your license, and he goes back in his car and checks it. And we just wait for him to come back with a ticket or a warning or whatever. But this time he's like, yeah, can you get out of the car? And I'm like, why does she, in my mind, I'm like, why does she have to get out of the car? So she gets out of the car. So at this point, my anxiety is rising. So I'm looking in the side mirror on my side, right, to see what's going on. And then, so I see her walk to the back of the van, the minivan. And then I see her go inside the cop car in the passenger seat. And he gets in, the driver's seat. And I'm like, oh, Lord, what is happening right now? I have never, this part of the interaction with police, as far as someone actually having to get out of the car, then get in his car, was new for me, right? New for all of us, right? So I'm like, why is he having her in a car? So I am like watching the side mirror like a hawk, trying to, because I can see now her, in the passenger seat of the cop car talking to the officer. So I'm trying to look at her mannerisms, look at her body language, look at her face, her facial expressions, see what's happening. Like I'm watching it like a hawk. And at the same time, my heart is beating fast. Like, oh, Lord, okay, Lord, let's let everything, just be fine. And just praying that this will be, okay, a good interaction, right? And she was in there for a minute, y'all. I'm like, okay, so when is he going to let her go? Like, what's happening? What are they talking about? So I'm just imagining all the things, right? So eventually she gets back in the driver's seat with her eyes just bugged out and just takes a deep breath. So me and my sister's like, what happened? What did he say? Did he give you a ticket? And she was like, no, he gave me a warning. And I was like, oh, okay. But what was he talking about? So she said that he asked her, where do you live? Like looking right at her license, where her address. So where do you live? So she's telling him the address. Where's the car? Whose car? What is the car? Who does the car belong to? She's like, it's a rental car. We got it from Maryland. And then he asked her, have you ever been in trouble before? And she's like, no, well, when I was a kid, I took a piece of candy from the store and, My mom maybe bring it back to the store, but, never got in like serious trouble. And he's like, okay. So then he proceeds to ask her, do you have any drugs in the car? Then he starts naming all the possible drugs that can potentially be in the car. Like, what? So, of course, she says, no, those are my daughters. Those are all of our daughters in the car. We don't have any drugs. And she felt, in her words, violated by this questioning. And he's saying, oh, this is procedure, blah, 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 all the things that, they tell him to say. But really? Really? So that interaction, just imagining if we weren't three Black women, would that have gone? Would he have asked the same questions? Right? I'm a whole doctor. The other cheer mom has 2 master's degrees. My sister is a registered nurse. 3 Black professional women just trying to get their babies back home. And you're asking us, do we have drugs in the car? Really? So we were all pissed. Like, you got to be kidding me, right? We just had a fun experience with the kids in Tennessee, even though we did see, I didn't mention, we went to a gift shop. There was some Confederate flags in there, whatever. But overall, the girls had a great time and wanted to come back. Can we come back another time or whatever? And then we get on the road and this happens. And just felt, again, like very angry, pissed off. And it just brings up other things that we've all kind of experienced, whether it's personally, whether it's through other family members, when it comes to these type of interactions and these type of assumptions and questioning that we, feel that if we weren't Black women, that would not have been the case, right? That would not have been the questions that would have been asked. And I wanted to share that story. So, she gets back on the road, and again, like I said, her words were feeling violated, felt just very disrespected from that whole experience. And I noticed, as we're driving, that she just looked different, and just very nervous when driving. So I told her to pull over at the next rest stop, and I was going to take over, like, give you some time to just, process. We're all processing this right now, but I'm going to give you, because you were the actual person that was in the car with him asking these crazy questions. I'm going to allow you, give you some space to process that, right? So I share this because when it comes to perimenopause, menopause, it can look different, feel different in Black women. There are actually studies that show that we have more intense and more frequent hot flashes, that we enter menopause earlier, as well as Hispanic women earlier than compared to white women, and that our transition into menopause can last longer compared to white women. So white women, it can be on average 5 to 7 years, whether compared to Black women, it can be 10 or more years as far as the actual transition into menopause. So there's differences, right? And there's different theories of why this is, but the one that stands out is something called allostatic load, or weathering, is what I had mentioned before. And if you're not familiar with the SWAN study, SWAN, or Study of Women's Health Across the Nation study, it's an ongoing study that was started back in the 90s to analyze the psychological, biological, psychological, and social changes that can occur during menopause. And this study has shown that there is uh, this process called weathering, which basically means that there's a process of wearing down or being worn down by long exposure to the atmosphere. And that atmosphere essentially is discrimination, racism that can basically impact how we as Black women experience perimenopause and menopause. The SWAN study reported that um, there were Black women were more likely than white men to report financial instability, instances of discrimination, trouble with the police, experiences of violence, as well as illness or death of close family members, and that again impacted their experience, uh, the way they reacted to their menopause experience. So, knowing that there's the chronic exposure to racism, to discrimination, to these experiences like we had as Black moms driving on the road, these these things that we are exposed to can actually wear us down internally without us even realizing it, right? So, like I said, just having that experience and how we all were angry and pissed off, and then now trying to, the girls are asking questions, so we're trying to explain that to them, explain things to them, and all of that is the process of wearing down and the fight or flight, the activation of our nervous systems over and over again. That repeated exposure actually intensifies our symptoms in menopause, and perimenopause. So realizing that is important as we are navigating through these changes, right? So, as a Black woman, as a woman of color, being exposed to these environments, whether it's, in the workplace where you're the only, whether it's driving and having an interaction with the police, whether it's in a expensive store and getting different looks, like all these things I've experienced, and I know a lot of my friends have, that actually wears down on us and can worsen our symptomatology when it comes to perimenopause and menopause. And it's important for us to realize that as we are navigating through these changes, so we can acknowledge it and provide ourselves a safe space to talk about it. Because there's also research that suggests that Black women who experience discrimination and racism, when they don't talk about it and hold it in and hold it to themselves, it actually makes things worse as far as their symptoms. So it's good to actually talk about it and have safe spaces to have those discussions and talk about your feelings about that process and just to get it out. Because when you do that, you're not holding it in and causing more internal stress and then ultimately exacerbating your symptoms. So it's important to acknowledge the existence, right? The existence of the discrimination, the racism, the things that is happening, in your environment, and how it's actually affecting you, and not, and act like, oh, I'm fine and it's okay. Like, no, it's not okay. It's not okay, and I am not okay. Being okay with not being okay in that moment, and providing yourself space, to a safe space, not only within yourself, but also a group of people, who have shared experiences or shared feelings when it comes to that. So just like writing, back, and I told the other cheer mom that let me take over, let me give you some space. Just having that support is so helpful when you are navigating, perimenopause and menopause. So acknowledging those emotions and giving yourself that space to process it is important, and it impacts positively how you can experience perimenopause into menopause. And at the same time, being kind to yourself. Because when you don't have that safe space, when you don't talk about it, when you hold things in, and you have this repeated exposure, repeated emotion that comes up when you are exposed to those different feelings of, being othered, being discriminated against, or whatever that thing is, those end up in long-term consequences, right? That leads to high blood pressure. That leads to high cholesterol. That leads to cardiovascular disease, right? All those things, they have weathering in menopause can lead to long-term health issues, cardiovascular disease being the biggest one, right? So being aware of that is so important as we are navigating through these changes, because at the end of the day, with that, when you're thinking about what your options are, when you're trying to figure out um, what you want to try when it comes to managing your symptoms, hormone replacement therapy is not going to help you with that part, right? The supplement's not going to help you with that part. So the weathering, the allostatic load, all of that, and being aware that, the experience of Black women is different because of that, is important for all of us to know and recognize, and again, provide ourselves a space within ourselves, a safe space within ourselves, as well as create a tribe that can surround you and support you when different things happen. So when you are also dealing with menopausal symptoms, you can potentially minimize that, or not be affected as much, because you have created this space within yourself as well as amongst others, so that you can um, uh, not be in a place where the symptoms are, controlling your life and affecting you so badly that you're not able to do anything. So the whole point of acknowledging and providing yourself space, being kind to yourself, helps you to not only minimize your symptoms, but show up powerfully when you're trying to do big things like build a business, right? So that's what I wanted to share with y'all. Weathering in the Black experience of menopause is a thing. It is something that we all need to be aware of, and giving yourself the space to process it, and supporting others in that process is important. And this is why I created Menopause Moguls, for Black women of color who want to build a business. And, there's also disparities when it comes to Black women building businesses, right? We're the fastest growing entrepreneurs, but we definitely have barriers, right? So providing Menopause Moguls provide that space where we are acknowledging those barriers, but also supporting each other and providing safe space within ourselves and with each other, so that we can do big things like build a business and follow our dreams as we're navigating through these symptoms, and not allow these symptoms to control our life and prevent us from doing the things that we want to do or what we're being called to do. So if this is something that you feel like when you are, again, trying to build a business after 40, and you are experiencing, these intense hot flashes or intense symptoms in general, that you feel like you've tried different things, it's not really working. Menopause Moguls is a space where we cultivate that relationship with yourself, as well as with the community, to support you into navigating the changes by changing your response and creating that space for yourself, that you can regulate your emotions and how you react to different things so that your symptoms are not as influential when you're trying to do big things like build a business. So that speaks to you. That's something that you're interested in doing. Schedule a strategy call with me so we can talk about what that looks like for you moving forward. So that's what I have for you all today. Again, let me know in the comments if you're watching on YouTube or in a review if you're listening on the Apple Podcasts app. Let me know what y'all think. And let me know if you've had any of those experiences. Again, I want to provide a safe space for you and tell you that I see you, I feel you, and I get it. So, as always, sending love and light to you all, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.